Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the AviaDev Connectivity Update for June. This is the podcast offering a roundup and analysis of all of the comings and goings impacting the wonderful world of African aviation. I'm your host, Jon Howell, CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa, and as always, I'm joined by the two best connected men in African aviation, Behramjee Ghadially and Shawn Mendis. So, gentlemen, welcome back for episode 33, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
How time
33.
flies.
Yeah, 33.
But
I think that's
33
right,
with only us two or overall?
Well, overall, this is episode 380 something, but you would know that, wouldn't you, Behramjee? Because you're watching. So
you're the numbers.
Behramjee,
You're the
before we
numbers
kick
guy,
off,
Behramjee. You're the numbers guy.
Yeah, come on. I'm getting worried here. Don't rely on me. How was your first AviaDev experience, Behramjee?
Oh, it was very nice. Very, very interesting. I met a lot of nice people. I wrote my honest review about it on LinkedIn. So I was very happy, and I would highly encourage people in the industry, especially in the African industry, to attend. But I have an idea, John, just a short idea. I think this has potential to expand to even the hotel industry, because at the end of the day, hotels also need to know how many passengers are coming into a certain
You're
country.
going to tell them about FHS?
I know, that's where it came from. We came from a hotel conference that are...
okay.
Yeah, so it's a very, very good point, well made. But yeah, I think we've got some debrief notes, but it was great to have you with us. We've got some great photos, got some good experiences. I think, a lot of the people realize that you're real, and that we're all human beings. So that was
He's
good.
not a yeah, exactly. Behramjee comes across a bit of an AI bot at times.
Yeah, no, not at all. He's completely unique. So this month we have got a really huge month. We say it every single month. It just stuff piles up and adds up, and it's quite varied. So I think we've got 11 topics to cover. We've got a $1 billion Boeing order in Uganda, Air Zimbabwe potentially coming to London, a UK first for Zanzibar, a route announcement that came on the stage at AviaDev as well. So for those watching live, either on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can drop a message into the chat. We are monitoring that. We will respond. Let us know where you're watching and what your questions are or your comments as we go through over the next 75, 90 minutes, something like that. And then, of course, the quick disclaimer before we get started that, of course, the opinions of my guests shared here are not necessarily those of AviaDev. So with that said, let us start with the biggest check written in African aviation this month, signed in Entebbe, although perhaps we're a little premature and the check isn't signed, Shawn. So talk to us about Uganda Airlines. It was obviously the reason that our event patron, Atagurma, couldn't be with us in person at the event. He was busy. And we also wanted to wish him a very happy birthday for yesterday, didn't we? So, yeah, over to you.
Happy birthday, Atagurma. I was going to lead off with that. Happy birthday to Atagurma. He turned 83 yesterday. I caught up with him. He didn't make it to AviaDev, but I caught up with him in Lome at the ASKY event a few days later. He's going as strong as ever. So, I think this is hopefully his last Boeing order, but you never know. But yes, Uganda Airlines effectively has signed a memorandum of understanding with Boeing. Neither has put out specifics of the deal publicly, although there is a lukewarm press release that is floating around, and a big thanks to Shakila for forwarding it to me, because I would not have found it otherwise. But yeah, they have signed an agreement for 8 aircraft direct from Boeing, as well as 2 freighters from the secondary market. The details, as per sources close to it, it will be that 8 aircraft is going to be 4 wide bodies, presumably 787s, and 4 narrow bodies, presumably 737 Maxes. Specifics of delivery dates, times, what this means with regards to the return of the A330s or scrapping of the A330s or conversion of the A330s into very expensive paperweights is still undetermined. In fact, the details of how this involves the A330s probably never will be publicly revealed. My understanding is that the formal check it's not even the check, the formal signature for the official order will be appended at the Farnborough airspace. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that there is officially for it. We await the official details, but I've always said that the only way that Uganda Airlines can be saved is by tearing it down and building it back up again from scratch. And this seems to be the building it up back again from scratch before it has been torn down. But knowing Girma, I am going to make the assumption that there is a tear it back down, which is an exit strategy for the A330s before the build-up begins. So fingers crossed that is what it entails. And if so, I'm not going to say it's going to be successful, but this is probably the only chance they have of being successful, because as it currently stands, it is effectively a failed airline.
Yeah, and being successful. So I know you've got some ideas here, Behramjee, about how they can and will use the aircraft. So go for it. Just give us the overview now that we know what the order is. Or
I've actually got a list of pros and cons, but it is more or less using the same theme that Sean said, rebuilding the airline from scratch, because this order basically signifies that. So let's start with the positives. The positives is that the order is probably right sized for what the future long-term strategy should be: equal number of wide bodies and equal number of narrow bodies. The wide bodies being the 787-9. Sean did not mention the specific variant of the 787 that was ordered. So presumably,
we don't know. There is no, as far as public statements go, there is no confirmation as to specific variants. In fact, there's no confirmation of anything beyond the fact that it is 8 aircraft, a mixture of wide and narrow. So, I mean, the 4+4 is what we've heard from sources, but officially all it says is 8 plus 2 freighters.
But for what the media is saying is the -9 for the 787 and the MAX 8.
The media on this particular issue, the media is completely unreliable. I mean, you were with me when we got you weren't there, but I got these questions from a journalist in Uganda saying that they plan to introduce the first aircraft by June 15th. And I'm like, and how are they going to do that? And they said, the president has said that the UPDF pilots are highly trained and they will start flying these planes until they can train the civilians. So when you start looking at media reports, I will take everything with a huge pinch of salt. This is why I'm saying, let's look at what the official says and what reputed sources, who obviously want to remain anonymous, within the Boeing side, within the Uganda side, are saying. But media reports, please, let's ignore media reports. The media in Uganda on aviation issues, with maybe 3 exceptions, is utterly useless.
Okay, but for the 737 MAX, most likely it will be for the MAX 8, which is also the right-sized aircraft for many of the Middle East routes. It can fly even to Mumbai non-stop from Entebbe without a payload restriction. I hope that the 787 that they order has crew rest facilities in it, because otherwise they will have to block seats in economy or business class for the crew. So if they've not decided on that, I would just like to point that out. The 4 787s, considering their current network, one aircraft would probably be dedicated to Guangzhou 3 times a week. One aircraft would be probably doing London. That's 2. One aircraft will be probably doing a Middle East route, which will be Dubai or Riyadh. And the 4th aircraft will probably be doing rotations within Africa, like Lagos or Johannesburg, or maybe increasing frequencies to London. Because for it to have an effective hub and spoke model, it should adopt the same Ethiopian Airlines timings for Europe, where the aircraft arrives in the morning and departs in the evening, so that the intra-African flights connect properly via Entebbe in both directions. So another thing that they also ordered was one 767 freighter and one 737 freighter as well. So this is where I'm a bit in disagreement, because the 767, as we all know, is a totally different type of aircraft. They've only ordered one unit, so they need separate set of pilots, engineers for that. It creates a bit of fleet complexity. Ideally, if they wanted a freighter, they should have just stuck to the 737-800 freighters, or they've changed the 767 to an ACMI contract, because that'll be less headache for them operationally. But just ordering one 767 freighter is, it's following the same mistake that Air Tanzania has done with their order.
A mistake? Never. Air Tanzania never makes mistakes.
So then I would like to say, this is a very important point. They've ordered the aircraft mix is correct, but where will they find the right number of pilots to fly these airplanes? Because to be frank, Uganda does not have a large aviation pilot community like, say, Nigeria has, or a few other African countries like South Africa. So finding the right number of pilots, they'll have to hire expats, obviously, once all these planes get delivered, and they'll also
They
have
did
to
exactly this with the 330, Behramjee. When they brought the 330s in, initially Rishworth was recruiting 330 crews for them, and slowly they phased in Ugandan captains. They still have some expat captains on 330, as far as I'm aware. So I don't think that's going to be a major issue for them. They've already got the same situation with their existing wide-body fleet of the need to quickly escalate local captains into that. But crewing is not going to be a problem for a small fleet like this. I mean, you can get enough crew from the secondary market to crew 4 wide bodies like that, and especially if you're going to offer them European bases and rotations, easy.
Yeah, but currently wide body fleet is only 2 units. They don't have a narrow body fleet, so essentially it's an increase of 4 wide bodies and 4 narrow bodies. So it won't be that
Well,
easy.
we're not going to see. We haven't seen what they're planning to do with the CRJs. And currently they crewed for 4 CRJs, and I believe 2 of them are AOG. So my understanding, again from sources within, is that they intend to retain the CRJs and deploy the CRJs on domestic and near regional. Yeah. So that is my understanding of what the plan is. You can't go wrong with that. But remember, the CRJs were a bad decision anyway. They are the wrong variant for what they wanted. There's the last production models of an aircraft type that was marginally successful at best. So I'm not convinced, but it's the CRJs were far less of a problem for them than the 330 were. In fact, the CRJs were probably their best. The best choice in the startup was choosing CRJs, given the long experience that Ugandan carriers have had with CRJs technically in the past. There was a pool to draw from, as well as a pool in Rwanda next door to draw from. So they did well with the CRJs. It was the 330s which effectively have made them a failed airline at this point of time, and which need to be, whose disposal needs, by whatever means, needs to be part of the solution.
Yes, the CRJ, when I was at Airways, when the former Air Uganda fell apart, we hired 15 of their CRJ pilots in 2014 or 15. So that's 14. Why the CRJ, I believe, was ordered brand new, because they already had that existing pool of talent. Another thing which I would like to point out, and this is a very serious thing, I hope that when they get the 787 cabin configuration done, there is no premium economy in there, because there's absolutely no need for a premium economy cabin for Uganda Airlines. There is no market for it, and I hope Boeing is responsible and does not advocate for a premium economy cabin. Currently, the Airbus A330-800 does have a premium economy cabin, but it's absolutely not required for a market like Uganda. So I hope they stick to a normal dual-class cabin, preferably 24 business class and 280 odd economy class seats, which is more than enough if it's a Dash 9. So,
I'll tell you this. From my conversations with Ade in the past and Shakila now, and various other people within the commercial organization, one of their biggest challenges has been brand positioning that premium economy cabin. Because it's all well and good to say you're offering the premium economy on the 330-800, but then you're stepping down to a CRJ for your connecting flight. And it's very difficult to sell that premium experience. Exactly. And so it's very difficult to sell that premium experience when you're not actually offering a premium experience over the entire trip. And the O&D for premium to Uganda itself is a very small market. So premium economy cabin, by all accounts, has been an upgrade cabin. You want to upgrade someone, but you don't want to give them the full business class, throw them in premium economy, and that tends to be how that has been filled up so far. And so, no, I cannot see how internally there is the momentum for premium economy product to be continued.
I hope
It
not.
has been an unmitigated failure for them.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Let's leave that one there because we still got 10 to go, but some great insight. No, I love that. So obviously that was a carrier that's kind of rebuilding itself. It's not an old carrier, but it's starting to rebuild. And now we're going to talk about one that is making a long-awaited return potentially. So we want to talk about the number one unserved city pair, as per the Airbus Exploring the Horizons report from AviaDev, which was released there. So if you haven't read it yet, go and download it and read it. And that route is London to Harare in Zimbabwe. And we've got some inside intel here, I think, because both Gatwick and Air Zim were with us in Botswana. So, Sean, what do we know? What's the latest? Is it going to happen?
Like the Boeing order from Uganda Airlines, we know everything, but nothing has been said officially. So the reality is that Air Zimbabwe has signed an agreement with Air Plus Ultra, which is a Spanish carrier, ACMI operator of colorful pedigree, let's put it that way. If you really want to know what Air Plus Ultra has ties to the Maduro regime and bribery scandals in Spain and so forth, you can Google them. There's enough to keep you in that rabbit hole for a day or two. But yes, they have an appropriate match for Air Zim, if you ask me. But anyway, they have signed an agreement brokered by Chapman Freeborn, another friend of AviaDev. I presume it is Dan Huggins, who's former ACC and ACS, is now with Chapman Freeborn, and then this comes out brokered by Chapman. It's got Dan's fingers all over it. I had a chance to talk to Jonathan Pollard, obviously the Chief Commercial Officer of Gatwick, who was on my panel at AviaDev, as well as Edmund Makona, who's the CEO of Air Zimbabwe. And both of them off the record have effectively said that there are things in progress. Now, where that progress is through other sources, we have been able to basically understand that this is all, and this is a name that's actually going to crop up maybe a couple of times during this this podcast now, but I think we need to bring it into the open. There's a guy at the UKCA by the name of David Kendrick. And I know that at this exact moment, people who know David Kendrick will be letting out a groan. I know David is probably not listening to this, but David Kendrick is the guy who approves foreign operator permits, among other things, at the UKCA. And he's also the guy who led the divorce between the UKCA and EASA during Brexit. Following that divorce, it is no longer as simple as signing a contract with the European operator if you want to operate a wet lease flight to and from the UK as a third country operator. You can do it easily if you have a British operator, but currently there are a very limited number of British operators capable of doing that, one of them being TUI, which we will be discussing probably as our next item here. So consequently, the approval for Air Zimbabwe is not just a traffic rights approval, which obviously they do have a virtual designation, but in addition, there needs to be approval from the UKCA and DFT. DFT is not as much of a problem, but UKCA primarily of Air Plus Ultra to operate on behalf of Air Zimbabwe. So my understanding is that the commercials are in place. It's just awaiting this. Now, the word has been they're looking at a July start. That is 1 week away. If they want to launch, and the plan is for 3 weekly A330-300s, Harare to Gatwick, overnight flights both ways. So that's effectively 6 days of the week and 1 day down, which probably would be used for Johannesburg rotations or something like that. But, you're selling that at 1 week notice is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I worry because this is a much needed move, but it has to be done well. And launching this flight 3 weekly wet lease A330, spot on. That's exactly the kind of operation you need to do. But you cannot launch that at 1 week notice. You cannot launch it for this summer. This summer's sales are done. I mean, if you launched it at Easter time for the summer, you had a chance of capturing a little bit of that market. But where it stands right now, if you launch this flight for this summer, you're done. You will lose more money than you can afford, and it will put AirZim, which is slowly, very slowly climbing its way out of a very deep hole. It'll push it far deeper into that hole. So my only piece of advice here is, guys, please, please, please do not think of starting this flight with 1 and 2 weeks of advance notice. If you cannot get a month, forget a month. I mean, you should be getting at least 3 months, but 2 months of advance sale. If you cannot get that in there, just target November, December, and improve your regional connectivity where you can connect through Harare to, say, a Cape Town, to a Joburg, to things like that, because those are infinite demand markets where you will be able to draw even in the off season, or the decent yields over in the spill traffic in the opposite direction during peak season, because the Zim market obviously is heavily VFR driven, and that is very seasonal. So that is my advice. I've given it to them in person, I give it to them in public, and I just sincerely pray that the politics are not going to force them to launch this route when they quite patently cannot sustain it at such short notice.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to make. We talk around the whole route development process and some of the mistakes that are made, and just because there's a gigantic market here that we've said for 3 years this has been the number one unserved market, right? Doesn't mean that if you make a mistake like such a short lead time to put a flight on sale, you're just chasing your tail straight away. So, really important that you give it enough time to actually, for the world to be sensitized that this thing is actually happening, and give yourself a chance to make some sales and get some money in the bank. Behramjee, how do you see this one? Anything you want to add?
Oh, yes, I have a lot of statistics for this.
Oh, great.
Firstly, the number one unserved market from Africa intercontinental is not Harare to London. Despite what the Airbus report stated, the actual number one unserved market is Kinshasa to Dubai in 2025. So let's get that out of the way first. Now, with regards to Harare to London, the market grew last year by 16% year over year. It grew from 119,000 to 137,000 round trip passengers. Point to point, Harare to London, the rest of the UK was an extra 34,000 passengers from Manchester, Bulawayo, Birmingham, Bria Falls, etc. Sorry about that. So that's one thing. So we're looking at a market size potentially for Zimbabwe to the UK 142,000, but London itself is quite big. Now, Sean correctly mentions 3 times a week using A330. It needs regional feed. Places like Lusaka, Dar es Salaam, Entebbe, Johannesburg, etc. to feed it properly. The flight will arrive in the morning and depart in the evening, similar to what Ethiopian Airlines does with their London Heathrow flights, and what we suggested Uganda Airlines should also do. And just to let people know regarding who currently controls the market, Ethiopian Airlines has 58% market share on the London to Harare route currently, followed by Emirates 15%, Rwanda Air 9%, Qatar Airways 8%, and Kenya Airways 5%. Ironically, though, Emirates, which has the second highest market share, 15%, and though it involves the most backtracking via Dubai, their average fare is 25% higher than the other one-stop operators, Rwanda Air, Qatar Airways, and KQ. And what I find surprising about this is that KQ, which has now 12 flights a week to London, their market share is the lowest amongst the one-stop operators. And I find that quite sad and quite eye-opening, because they should have a much higher market share, logically speaking, than Rwanda Air and Qatar Airways. So there's something that KQ needs to look at, because their connections seem to be quite good in both directions. So I don't understand why they're suffering with that. Maybe because they have enough point-to-point traffic already sustaining that flight. But Harare is a niche market.
AQ currently has such a bad reputation for reliability that people are going out of their way to avoid them. And I hate to say it, I've told this to Martin, I've told this to Julius, it's the reality. They need to step up their game because their long haul fleet in particular, as well as the 737s and the Embraers, but the long haul fleet in particular, they don't have subs available. So when something goes down, you get really messed up. And especially with VFR traffic, where you're traveling with kids, where you're traveling with a tight window of leave from work or whatever else, they're very price sensitive, but they're also very reliability sensitive. And ET in particular, the Gatwick flights now connect both ways via Harare, and they're offering much better fares to Gatwick than they are to Heathrow. And you've seen that's why they've gone. If you look at the trend from 23 to 25, I think Emirates was actually the leader in 23. And when you look at the 25 numbers, ET has just, gone not from zero. I mean, they were still in the 20% range or thereabouts, but Emirates was slightly higher than them. And ET has just shot to the top. And the basis of that has been on the basis of ET's Gatwick flights, which that daily overnight to Harare just connects so beautifully with on the days that Gatwick operates. And I think that's a lesson to be learned, that reliability and good connections really are what has built ET's market share. It's not, as you say,
Yes.
AQ should have a larger market share, but Emirates and ET are winning on the basis that people view these as reliable. Qatar is actually growing their market share there slightly, but ET is just so far and above the rest in this particular market that it's a one-horse show. Will Air Zim's entry into this market hurt ET? Yeah, it will in this market, but I think, it will. I mean, without a question, a big chunk of that market will go, but ET will remain the second place player. But, ET is struggling anyway with finding enough supply into London markets rather than demand. So for them, it's really going to be a case of we'll just, sell that from Johannesburg or from Lilongwe or from Dar es Salaam or from Zanzibar or, wherever else. And, I think that's a good segue for John to lead us into the next section of our point over here, which is another route to the UK and London Gatwick.
This one I'll start.
Yes.
John, we can't hear you at all.
Sorry. Thank you. I was muted because I see our screens keep. It must be annoying for the people watching. It's whoever's talking is getting put into the middle. So I'll change the view. I'll change the view so that it's a bit more static for everybody watching, because they're probably getting a headache from seeing that change. It's the intelligence of the AI, right? It gets a little bit too intelligent sometimes. Staying with London Gatwick, genuine UK first. This is the announcement that TUI is going to launch Gatwick to Zanzibar from winter. This is the only UK tour operator with a non-stop flight to Zanzibar, I believe. So I think it's going to be a couple of times a week. But Behramjee is going to fill us in. What's going on? What's driving this? We've seen Luanda Air come in, right, and say. Yeah, go on, sure.
I should add to this that once again, this is something where the news jumped the gun before the official announcement, where this was leaked a few days before even the airports and the operator didn't know about it, but the tour operator let it slip, and it was all over social media before the dust settled and everyone heard that this is actually happening. So 1, 2, and 3 have all been leak items so far this week.
It's always good fun when I'm the one saying, "Hey, have you heard about congratulations on this new route?" And everybody's like, "What are you talking about? Yeah, what are you talking about? How do you know?"
It was on both ends. Both Gatwick and Zanzibar were like, "Oh, new route? Oh, yeah. We just saw the news. Great, yay, congrats." So this is by the way, Gatwick says to stress that this is number 27th African destination from Gatwick.
Wow, that's amazing. And just before you start, Behramjee, just to go back to your point, Sean, on the lead time, they're saying this is going to go on sale like next week, but it's not going to start until November. So again, you've
But November 2027.
Exactly. But it's gonna be, on sale so far ahead because they do this huge lead time thing because it's a tour operator, and why do we always want to do things tomorrow and not give them chance to succeed. So anyway, Behramjee, over to you.
Yes. I was very, very happy and excited when I read this announcement, and I would actually shortlist it from now to be my pick for the new route announcement for the year for our awards in December. Because
26 or 27?
Well, it was announced in 26, and it will be starting in 27, similar to what SM Brussels did with the Kilimanjaro announcement. So I was very happy because this route has been begging for a non-stop flight to the London market from Zanzibar for a number of years post-COVID. And the numbers prove that. Not only do the numbers prove that, but even the average fare yield proves that. The entire London market to Zanzibar last year was 85,473 passengers round trip. And the average one-way fare was $746 with YQ included. And that's for an 8.5 hour flight, which is about 4 hours less than Thailand or Vietnam or Singapore, etc., where the yields are a bit lower. And so it's a good combination of volume plus yield. And when it comes to the entire Tanzania market to London, you have to add an additional 68,000 passengers from Dar es Salaam and Kilimanjaro, but that's not the focus over here for TUI. They're just focused on the Zanzibar point-to-point market. So overall, Tanzania to London is 153,000. And out of that 153,000, 56% is valid for Zanzibar. So more than half of the London-Tanzania market is Zanzibar by itself, without a direct flight presently. Now, as John, you correctly said, TUI did announce this 1 year and 4 months in advance, which again has pros and cons, because announcing it so much in advance also gives enough lead time for a competitor to react. A competitor which has much more financial resources, like, say, British Airways or Virgin Atlantic. However, I do not believe this route is a British Airways type of route, because their aircraft are more premium focused. The cabins are more premium oriented. But I will not be surprised if Virgin Atlantic takes a shot at this route 3 times a week as a seasonal service from London. That's
so just to jump in though, the thing here is the TUI ecosystem, which is they're going to have the airline and they own the hotel, and so they'll put the package together of you fly with us, we transport you to the hotel, and then we keep you in the hotel in an all-inclusive, and all the money goes back to HQ at TUI, right? Which is always a conversation around destination development and what is the actual benefit for Zanzibar, right? That is a conversation I know Zanzibar is having, and other destinations saying, do we want more of these all-inclusive type resorts where the money is kind of ring-fenced? They're coming to our country, but they're not spending it. Cabo Verde is a great example of that with TUI as well.
Even Dakar, they have the resorts in Dakar, and they fly winter seasonally. But I just feel there is an opportunity for Virgin Atlantic if they want to experiment with the 3 times weekly winter seasonal service initially. TUI does have the advantage, as you correctly said, with the hotel and package mixed together. But there is room, because the market will be heavily stimulated. The Brits like to find new places to go for beach holidays. Stimulating the market, say, by even 40% in 1 year means an extra 35,000 passengers, which means Zanzibar to London could become 120,000 passengers in a year once TUI goes up. So I feel there is room for one more airline in this market. And also, you might be surprised, just like the Russians, the UK old folks might also be willing to invest in some property over there.
Oh, not this again.
I think it's the other thing. It's the warm water of the Indian Ocean, which is really going to be the
that's the draw, isn't it? That's the draw. It is.
And by the way, Zanzibar is a year-round destination now. It's no longer seasonal.
Yeah,
so that's also
because of thing. It's equatorial,
There's no
right?
seasons over there. It's by the equator, so it's always summer there.
It's always good. Because I think the thing to understand as a Brit, Behramjee, knowing the TUI product, is it's the kind of thing that they're putting out there now to get into the printed brochure to be given to those people so they can plan their holiday for next winter,
to be
right?
Tour rep?
I did.
Did you used
not
to be
for
a tour
TUI.
rep, John?
Okay.
Yeah, not for TUI.
Where? Magaluf for one of
In
those.
Corfu in Greece for Olympic
Corfu,
holidays
Oh, okay.
in 2003.
Wonderful.
Those were the days, and then also for
remember-
Mark Warner ski holidays and
I remember
Ingham's ski holidays in Canada.
Asterix, the comic book, had a series in Corfu also. There was one episode in
course.
Corfu.
It's a beautiful, beautiful island. Yeah, beautiful island. So good memories.
Yeah, but I'm just going to say this one thing. If Virgin is going to go into it, and similar to TUI, Virgin has Virgin Holidays. And
Yes.
Virgin Holidays drives a lot of their vacation products, such as, Orlando, for example. I mean, their Manchester, Orlando, and all their Orlando services outside of
Cape
the
Town
Heathrow
also.
ones are pretty much, So there's a lot. Cape Town, not as much. Cape Town's a lot of independent travelers, but
Yes.
Florida in particular is driven heavily by Virgin Holidays. If Virgin Holidays is going to get into that Zanzibar market, as by rumors which have floated around, they have looked at expanding out of their traditional zones. I actually see TUI entering this market as being a bit of a red flag to Virgin. It is an unproven market that, unlike Florida, where, it's a proven market to take the bucket and spade flights all summer long. I think Zanzibar, they'd be happy to let TUI prove the concept before they want to try and get into the little battle on it. So I don't see Virgin preempting this by any means. I think if TUI hadn't come in, maybe Virgin may have considered it, but Virgin's a lot tighter with the Heathrow-only operation, with more fleet constraints, with alliance numbers, with Delta ownership, there's a number of different issues driving Virgin's fleet deployment decisions, while TUI also, believe me, TUI is a gargantuan bureaucracy in itself, but it's a very different set of criteria that they will use to select a route such as this one versus what Virgin would. So it's not apples and oranges, it's apples and sheep.
And they've got the infrastructure. There is this big hotel, I think, called the Mora in the northeast. Then they have one on the west side. They've already got the hotel bedrooms that they own and control. So now they're just controlling the supply chain end to end, right?
Yeah,
Which
remember,
is, as I say,
TUI
how
Group
they do
is
it
already flying there.
Yeah.
TUI Netherlands is already flying to Zanzibar. So it's not like TUI Group does not have experience with the Zanzibar market. All they're doing now is that TUI UK is going to piggyback on the TUI Group's existing ground infrastructure. So it's a very different set of dynamics than Virgin, who would literally be Virgins in that market.
Yeah, and fascinating how that sort of looks versus like a Discover, right? Which is a very leisure-driven outbound German tourism, but Discover don't own any of the properties. They're not a tour operator. They're a leisure airline that then plugs into whatever else there is. I don't think they have a holiday product, do they, Sean? At least not yet.
No.
There's going to be something in the Lufthansa. There's something in the Lufthansa group in terms of, I know there's Lufthansa's, various travel brands within the Lufthansa group, and I'm sure that's tied into that. The sprawling entity that is Lufthansa Group often doesn't even know what its own tentacles are.
I just think what they have to do, knowing the Zanzibar team, knowing that strategy there from the investment perspective, they're trying to be careful to manage that you don't end up with, they want a spectrum of travelers, and that's what I loved about Zanzibar. You can go and get a bed for $6 a night in a hostel, or you can spend $6,000 a night on a private island and everything in between. And that there is something nice to say to be said about that. They just want to guard against these kind of ring-fenced, all-inclusive resorts that suck the money away, provide employment, but not that much else necessarily. And that's an interesting debate to have. Behramjee, sorry.
Yes, the last thing I would
Desperate.
like to
He's about
say,
to burst, I think.
Yeah. Air France has been very, very successful flying the Zanzibar route over the last year in particular, especially with the combination with Kilimanjaro. They're increasing it to a daily flight in the winter peak season this year. So Air France, by virtue of being Sky team, Virgin will obviously have some data to see how well they've been doing. But also for Virgin, again, I would like to say they can, due to the short flying time between the two cities, in the winter season when they have wide body aircraft to spare, if they fly 3 times a week, it's basically using half an aircraft, because they can easily do the rotation within less than a 24-hour cycle So 3 times a week would basically mean half a wide-body aircraft. So I just wanted to point out there are some advantages also from a fleet utilization point of view, because unlike South Africa, where they park the aircraft the whole day, they don't need to do that for Zanzibar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right. Really. Well, let's watch.
Yeah.
Let's watch and see.
Front half or rear half of the aircraft, Behramjee, which one's better?
Straight down the middle. Right. Let's go to West Africa. Let's go to Ghana, where Emirates have announced they are going to add 4 more flights per week between Dubai and Accra. So that will be from daily to 11 times a week. So huge capacity going in to the Ghana market. What's behind this? Who wants to go first? Behramjee, you got some numbers on this one?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
I do. So Emirates announced recently, just a few days after we left Gaborone, that they're going to increase Accra from July onwards from 7 to 11 times a week. The additional 4 weekly flights will be an early morning departure from Dubai, and it'll be an immediate turnaround. It won't be a tag-on service to anywhere. So it'll become 4 weekly turnaround to and from Ghana, and the existing daily 777, which goes onwards to Abidjan. So 11 weekly 777-300 ERs into the Accra market. Now, when it comes to the point-to-point demand, the Accra market to Dubai point-to-point grew by 22% year over year, from 129 to 157,000 passengers. And it's interesting to notice the Emirates passenger mix on this route. Emirates last year carried 40% point-to-point amongst their passengers, and 60% were transit beyond Dubai. Their top markets in ranking order, I would like to say, are as follows: Guangzhou, Mumbai, Delhi, Jeddah, Shanghai, Beijing, Singapore, Medina, London, and then Sydney. So these are the top 10 ranking markets beyond Dubai. And that's not a
Beyond
surprise.
Dubai, but their number one market is Dubai itself,
Yes,
and their number 2
yes.
market is Abidjan.
Yes, but I'm talking transit beyond Dubai, not Fifth Freedom.
I'm just saying
Huh.
the Accra Abidjan market is one where Emirates actually is the dominant carrier
Yes,
by a long way.
yes.
They're more than
Just
50%
like
of the
Harare
market
to
share
Muscat.
as a fifth. Exactly. Those are 2 markets, 2 huge markets within Africa, where Emirates is actually the number 1 carrier as a non-African Fifth Freedom operator, which once again begs the question of, is this wise? Is this, are you creating more than just employment on the ground, and is the money staying in the continent or going back to head office? So once again, a question to be raised, but yes.
So I think that this has also been, this was planned in the past. They used to operate temporarily. Sean, I remember before COVID, they operated a near double daily product, or were looking to increase it.
Yeah. So I'll give you the backstory on that. That was something that was planned in 2019.
But just before you continue, let me just finish. I also think that this move was premeditated because of the Etihad impending arrival into Accra.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So definitely this is an aggressive move by them commercially, and they want to ward off any market share poaching of Etihad by increasing their flights as soon as possible. And if you look at it in hindsight, I think I told Sean this story. In 2012, Etihad announced Washington, D.C. 2011 or 2012, they announced Washington, D.C. with the 1-year advance notice. Emirates at that time was not in Washington, D.C. Within a couple of weeks of announcing that, Emirates announced their intention to operate to Washington, D.C., but starting 4 months before Etihad. So yes, there is logic in announcing a route many months in advance, but if you announce it too much in advance, you're also creating an opportunity for your immediate competitor to strike first. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
So continue with your backstory.
Etihad today is a very different animal than it was in 2011-12. I think.
No, I'm just giving
yeah. So let's put it this way: from what we've seen with Etihad, and again, both Emirates and Etihad were at AviaDev, and we've had a chance to chat with the teams from both of those airlines about their plans for the market, as well as Qatar Airways. And I think it'll be interesting to see how some of these African markets play out over the next few months. But yeah, the backstory on this is back in 2019, Emirates had actually announced these exact flights. I think it's even the same days of the week, but essentially the same schedule, 4 additional 777-300 ERs. And back then, it was largely being driven. I mean, obviously, the O&D market is important, but it would have improved connectivity to Africa World Airlines networks. We had just signed back then when I was with AWA, we just signed a partnership with Emirates, and this would have given Emirates a better flow. So it would have arrived just in time to make our connections to Freetown and Monrovia in particular. And Emirates wanted to try and capture a lot of the market for West Coast destinations over there and push it. And in fact, we even offered them, similar to what we planned with South African Airways on Accra, Abidjan, where SA would have pulled out of Abidjan. I would have co-shared with us. But the problem is that a big chunk of Emirates' Abidjan business is driven by belly cargo. And so they have to keep that Abidjan, but Abidjan passenger numbers aren't strong enough to justify a 777, as well as the fact that Abidjan needs a TAAG because the hub bank could not be hit. It's too long a flight for a hub bank to hit off the main hub. So, with the combination of scheduling and market dynamics and the fifth freedom and partnerships and everything else, they couldn't. In fact, those 4 additional flights they announced in 2019 were yanked before the flights even were due to launch. I think the pre-sales were horrendous. It was just a poor timing to do that. The market is growing now. I'm not going to say it's going to be successful or not, but if you're going to if you've got the spare capacity, which obviously they do have because they're getting a lot of 350 deliveries coming up between now and when those flights launch. And, those 350s will backfill 777s elsewhere, freeing up 777 capacity. Accra is an established market. It's a good yielding market. This will improve connectivity from Accra, so reduce connection times, moving stuff off that single bank where Accra has traditionally fed into so far, which has skewed traffic somehow. I think this just gives Emirates a better ability to spread their traffic from Accra across the Dubai hub on different banks. It's a lower risk number. It's a lower risk thing today, and especially if they can get in before Etihad, it's a shot against Etihad's potential Ghana to China market play, which obviously is something that Etihad has made it very clear that they are is a big driver of their entry into the Ghana market. So we shall see, but I'm not going to say this is up there as best move of the year, but it's a move that makes a lot of sense, and I hope it works out for them. I think that the market will be strong enough for both Etihad and Emirates. They'll just have to find their proper capacity levels, both for O&D and Sixth Freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it was great to see we had Etihad, we had Emirates, we had Qatar with us. We would have had Turkish if it hadn't been for everything that's going on. They were due to be with us. But it's also a bit of an indictment on, some of the other carriers that don't see, like British Airways. They're just not particularly engaged with the African market. They want to milk what they've got, right? So I hope that will change going forward. But it was so good to see them engaging and understanding and coming to Africa and saying, right, this is what we want to do. And now obviously Emirates getting involved. Right, where we're going to go next is we're going to go back to Kenya Airways, because we've already mentioned them once today, but this is actually some route reductions and cancellations. So the first one, of course, Behramjee, affecting you, is Douala. Douala is going to be suspended. That's already gone, I think. Yes. And the second one is Abidjan is halved from 6 to 3 a week. And so, those two markets, I'd love your analysis on those. And then after that, we'll talk about the 777 being deployed domestically. But yeah, kick us off with Douala and Abidjan, and I guess you're not surprised about this.
No, I'm actually not surprised, and I'm actually very happy that Kenya Airways suspended Douala, because when they moved their afternoon flight, which I've taken twice before, to an overnight flight with an extension to Abidjan, the problem was it lacked connections via Nairobi in both directions to the main volumetric markets, namely being Johannesburg and Bangkok, Guangzhou. Only Mumbai was connected with a 1 hour transit from Douala, and that's not such a big market. Dubai, Guangzhou, and Johannesburg were very big volume markets for them, and they were not connecting. Plus, at the end of the day, the point-to-point market does not like arriving into Douala so late at night, as well as their fifth freedom, Douala to Abidjan, arriving to Abidjan at 2 or 3 in the morning, departing back an hour later, was not conducive. So even though they flew the E90 and the 737 sometimes on and off, it just did not make sense because the point-to-point market could not sustain it, and the sixth freedom transit via Nairobi was not there because of the connections. So I'm happy that they suspended this route because it could not be sustained. It was probably not even covering its cash costs, obviously, and they could redeploy the aircraft on a more cash positive route. Also, with regards to Abidjan, what I've noticed is that Air Peace has become very, very aggressive on the Abidjan to Dakar market, which Kenya Airways also competes against. Since Air Peace launched their 4 weekly Abidjan Dakar services, they've come out with very aggressive pricing strategies and incentives to travel agents, so which has helped to grow their market share and reduce at the expense of others, namely KQ. So yeah, this is not at all surprising. I hope KQ can redeploy the asset better somewhere else. I would suggest Abuja, because Abuja desperately needs an extra flight to East Africa, connecting to other parts of Southern Africa.
And if you saw Theo's report as well as Geert's report, Abuja to Nairobi remains one of the top intra-African O&D unserved markets.
Yes, it was about 24,000 point-to-point passengers last year without a non-stop link. But most importantly, with Abuja, the yields are very high. Now, I remember Martin telling me a few years ago when I met him in Nairobi.
We're suddenly getting echo at your end, Sean.
Wow.
I muted him.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Don't know what happened there.
The problem with Abuja that KQ had in the past was obviously the forex issue, but also when they used to fly the E90, that a lot of left behind baggage. So if they want to return to Abuja, the demand is there, the volume is there, the yield is there. They should look at it initially 3 or 4 times a week, but with the 737 to start with, so that they don't have the headache of leaving baggage left behind. But it can be easily sustained. Now that the forex issue has been resolved more or less, so I don't see why they should not be there, because it will help feed their network quite nicely. Now, regarding the 777, we discussed the 777 reintroduction in our last podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
But we were talking about London, right? Not Mombasa.
Yes, Mombasa. I just saw it today morning when I woke up.
Yeah.
That they're using it. It's obviously for crew planning and crew training purposes.
Exactly. It's for getting back in there, but they're making a big wahala on the marketing side with it. So I can see Martin's fingers on it. That don't fly the 777 back on London to Mombasa. On Nairobi to Mombasa. So good for them. You know, it's given a choice of flying on an Embraer or a 777. I can think that especially the premium passengers, you'll get your little flatbed for your 20 minutes of airtime.
Yes, and it's also for all the airline enthusiasts in Nairobi and Mombasa, like they can experience something which they've not on that domestic route. It's just a short thing, so it's good for marketing as well as for crew training, etc. Nothing to lose.
Exactly, they've maximised the opportunity, and we can turn this into something quite novelty and get them really sensitize the local market, and then say, right, now we're going to put it on the on the longer haul stuff, which is obviously what it was made for.
If they will reactivate their second 777 also that's been given to Turkish, if that will be
their plan is to bring in a second 777. That's what they have said. However, my understanding is it's not going to be one of those with Turkish. Those have other plans for those. So it's going to be a second 777 sourced from market at time TBD. KQ right now with their fleet pronouncements, I listen to what George says in one year and comes out the other year. They're just chattering about everything.
Absolutely.
Where would you
Right.
think they would deploy their second 777? That Bangkok Guangzhou tag, or maybe
Who
Dubai?
the hell? I don't think. Look, I
No,
don't think even they know
I'm
what
just
they do.
asking no, I'm just asking a hypothetical question.
I don't like hypotheticals. Where they would probably deploy it is on the routes where they have the highest volume. So highest volume at this point of time is London. It potentially could be Guangzhou if they did it directly, but they are not doing it directly, and there's a good reason they're not doing it directly. So the reality is, other than London, I really can't see a route where they could deploy this with even a potential of making money on a regular basis right now. So personally, I think I would not even have gone for this 777 because it adds fleet complexity and everything else. But given the
Constraint.
nature of the fleet
Yeah.
transaction and the fact that the plane was already there, I can understand why they are doing it, because they need wide body capacity. I would have
Correct.
preferred to have another 787, but hands are tied. Their lack of financial capability is driving suboptimal decision making over there, and that is always a dangerous thing when stakes are high. So I leave it at that.
Absolutely. Right. Let's move to our next one. I'm quite excited about this because I haven't told the guys, but I have done a little cut of a session from AviaDev. So we're going to play that now and then get the reaction to this. So here we go.
In terms of the new aircraft that are coming in, the first one being the 4th of July, those have got a business class configuration. It's actually a staggered business class, so something very new to the region. I joke about it in the office that it's great for marriages because you don't actually sit next to your partner. They're somewhat behind you, so really good for that. But yes, it's going to be something completely different. And we have, as you mentioned, the Johannesburg to Zanzibar route. As soon as the new aircraft are available, we'll switch that out.
And Cape Town to Zanzibar coming too.
Yes, yeah. So we'll switch the current E2 out for the business class E2, so that'll operate on Joburg, Zanzibar. It'll operate on Cape Town to Zanzibar. And then we are announcing next week, but I'll let you guys know first since you're all here. We are doing Cape Town, Mauritius as well with the new E2s.
You heard it here first.
And then with regards to Cape Town, Lagos, obviously we can't say anything, but I plan to take your $10 before the end of the year.
All right. Sean, you remember that very well from AviaDev the other week?
Remember it? I was there. But yes, thank you very much to Catherine for sharing a world premiere route announcement on stage at AviaDev, and also for accepting my bribe of $10 to launch a new route by the end of the year. But we'll see if
I'm
that
sure that will be the
trades up.
deciding factor. I'm sure.
I'm sure it will. $10 is quite a lot of money in today's economy, especially when you convert it into rand. No, I think look, this is a classic cold water to warm water route over there. It'll connect the cold waters of the Cape to the warm waters of Mauritius. If you were at the panel that I moderated with Airlink, Embraer, and Azora at AviaDev, we had a long discussion about what drove the decision making for Airlink's choices and where they plan to go with these things. So if you haven't yet seen it, it's on YouTube in the AviaDev channel, for that. So please go have a look at it. It's called The Deal Room, and it's well worth 30 minutes of your time to check it out. I'm not saying that because I moderated, but because I genuinely think it really gives an understanding of what drove the airline's decision to choose the E2, how Embraer marketed it, how Azora came into it. It's just it's like a jigsaw which started off in pieces and then just sort of comes together by the end of the thing. But one of the points which Catherine made over there was that it's allowed them to look at markets, Cape Town to Zanzibar, Cape Town to Mauritius, which they previously did not have the fleet type to be able to serve appropriately. And Cape Town to Mauritius is somewhere that currently SAA operates and Air Mauritius operates. So Air Mauritius operating with the wide body, I think just twice a week, maybe. It's an interesting schedule because it arrives late night into Cape Town. My parents are on that flight in August, so I've become quite familiar with Air Mauritius's schedule into South Africa lately. But SAA also operates that, and SAA operates that as a daytime flight. And from what I've seen anecdotally, SAA has had a few issues with baggage and leaving stuff behind. So they don't really have the best reputation right now. I'm very curious to see how the E2 will perform, because this is a route which is going to need pretty much all of its legs as well as its ETOPS capabilities. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Catherine's confirmed they're putting their 2-class aircraft into this. So there's obviously going to be 12 premium seats, which is 10% of the cabin, which is effectively premium configured over there. So there's going to be a lot of premium sales that need to be done to make this thing viable. It's a very different kind of route than what Airlink's getting into, but it's a lower risk route than, say, a Cape Town to Lagos would be. And I think, Cape Town to Lagos probably would have been, and this is pure speculation, probably would have been announced by now if it were not for the current tensions between Nigeria and South Africa. You'd be absolutely tone deaf to announce, hey, we're launching Johannesburg, Abuja, and Cape Town, Lagos right now. But I do fully expect that when things calm down, we will see that. And, given that market peaks over the Christmas period, I think if we see an announcement from Airlink by, say, September for a launch at the end of November, I would not be surprised. And, as Catherine says, the first of the 2-class, or as they call them, the business class E2s, is going to come by the 4th of July, actually, is the delivery date planned for the first one. And according to De Villiers, we're going to see all three of them, like the three remaining ones after that, in quick succession, within a month or 6 weeks right after that. So that'll be interesting. And I don't know how true this is, rumor is that one of them might be in the black Skybox livery, like they currently have one of the 190s and one of the 135s in that livery. One of them may be in a special livery too. So again, pure speculation, but that is a rumor floating in the circles, and that would be a beautiful plane if it came out there. I think the E2s had a lot of good special liveries, but this would be a really nice one. So I'm optimistic. I think it's a low risk entry into that kind of market, and especially the cold to warm water traffic. Behramjee, what do you think?
Yeah. No, exactly. I think just before you come in, Behramjee, I think number one, it's a great route to show for Embraer to be able to say, hey, number one, we've got this blue chip operator in Africa. Number two, we're testing these longer range markets, etc., like you say, before Cape Town, Lagos hopefully comes in. And then the second thing is I think we need to coin it now. I think if there is a flight from the cold to warm water, it is forever known as a Behramjee. That's the new name, the terminology for a route, a Behramjee route. Yeah, if it connects somewhere from cold water. So I don't know, maybe Gatwick to Zanzibar is a Behramjee, right? The water's pretty cold here in the UK. It's nice and warm in Zanzibar.
Yeah, but there's no cold water at Gatwick itself. So it's got to be a coastal city. So it's got to be somewhere
it's really
like
close
Cape
to Brighton. Town. It's half an hour from Brighton Beach, it's not far. Anyway, Behramjee, your thoughts on this?
It's actually closer to Brighton than it is to central London, but that's a whole other story.
Don't start saying Gatwick, this. Guys. You'll get us in trouble. You'll get us in trouble.
But Sean, I
London, like London Oxford or London Southend or London Exeter.
Brighton North.
Who knows?
London, Sean, I Edinburgh. One of your panelists in one of your discussions at AviaDev also said the exact same thing, from the cold waters to the warm waters. I don't remember who it was, but there was one person who did say that exact quote.
They did, and then I picked up on that and called you out, Behramjee, in one of the segues. I seem to remember, because it was one. It's an in-joke for the people who actually consume the podcast, right? But there was quite a few in the audience. So you a bit of a no-brainer, this one for you, Behramjee. It's good.
Yes,
good route.
Yes, definitely. Cape Town to Mauritius last year, about 44,000 passengers point to point. Obviously, the point-to-point market is not their primary focus. It's going to be feeder traffic as well for domestic South Africa and a bit of regional feed via Cape Town to feed their Cape Town to Mauritius flight. It's a good testing ground for the new E2. It's good marketing material also for Embraer to look at how this flight performs with their aircraft. So, and it's low risk, twice a week only to begin with, and they should stimulate the market more. Air Mauritius is currently operating it with a 330. Am I right, Sean? 330-200?
330-900 is what is
900,
currently
okay.
scheduled for my parents' flight. But I've seen, it could be a 350 swap in as well. The configurations of those two are virtually identical at
Well,
Emirates.
your
So,
parents confirmed on Air Mauritius then?
yeah. I bought the Mauritius tickets on Friday. They are confirmed into Cape Town, back home from Joburg. So
Okay.
the open job just clinched it. It didn't have to worry about.
Good.
And we're booked on Airlink from Cape Town to Joburg. So
Okay.
just shout out to the Airlink guys as well. I'm not letting you guys down. I bought my ticket on you one way, and I booked it on Safair the other way. And the reason I didn't book it on South African Airways is your guys' fuel surcharges are too high, and I warned you about this. So anyway. Continue.
So now we know where Sean's going for his summer holidays. So that's good. Right, let's move on because we've still got a few more to do, and we're over an hour now.
Wait. There's something that Sean said which caught my eye. Johannesburg to
I'm bribing
Abuja.
Catherine $10 to launch. Sorry, yeah.
Sean said Johannesburg to Abuja is what Airlink is considering. I did not know that.
Yeah. We've discussed it on a previous podcast. They filed for the traffic rights that have been awarded them. So Cape Town, Lagos, and Joburg, Abuja are two of the routes they filed for, and I'd expect. Yeah, Cape Town, Lagos, and Johannesburg, Abuja, both are filed, and they're both ready to announce once the aircraft are in and the political situation calms down. Cape Town, Lagos will probably go first. It's higher volume, but Joburg, Abuja makes a lot of sense because if they time it right, they'll be able to get connections from within the region, which means you're not just talking about Joburg, Abuja, you're talking about...
That should have a payload restriction from Joburg.
No, I mean, it'll have a payload restriction, but it will not have a payload restriction to the point that it becomes unviable. And with the 2-class aircraft, you're going to be looking at a lower density configuration than what Airpeace has. We saw Airpeace was able to run that with pretty much an 80% payload on this. Look, I know the only way you're really going to see what the payload restriction is when they actually fly it. I am optimistic that given the yields on Joburg, Abuja, even with an 80% load on that,
I agree. That I agree. I remember South African Airways used to operate a 330 pre-COVID on Joburg, Abuja.
What? 330?
South African Airways or 320?
No, South African Airways used to code share on AWA from Accra to Abuja. So they used to fly the 330 into Accra and then code share on AWA's flight Accra Abuja. No, but pre-COVID, that was what they did. They did 320 into Abuja at some point of time. KQ did a 190 into Abuja at some point of time, but none of these have stuck.
SA did fly to Abuja.
Well before COVID.
Okay.
Right, let's park that one. We can bring that up after hours, and let's move to Angola and let's talk about TAAG because there's been lots of movement there. So we were delighted to have Jolson with us, who during the conference got promoted to CCO, and Miguel Carneiro, who's a friend of the podcast, friend of AviaDev. He's been to the event quite a few times. He is the new CEO of TAAG Angola. So congrats to both of them, a young, fresh commercial team in place in TAAG. And the things that have happened, not just the personnel changes, but they actually yesterday, the 23rd, and I got a nice video from Miguel this morning. They have launched Luanda Guangzhou, which is the 787-9, but I think they want the 787-10 on here as well. So talk to us about that route. Is that route I know we've talked about it before, and the leadership changes, what we can expect to see, because this is an airline that's invested a huge amount of money, got brand new equipment, big ambitions to become a hub airport in Africa, new airport infrastructure, new aircraft, new management team. I don't know. Sean's rubbing his eyes, so I think Behramjee, maybe you can start.
Sure. So, from the information that I have and from what it seems like, it seems it's more or less a government-driven decision that TAAG Angola needed to start China flights. They launched it with once a week initially. I assume it's due to some internal issues with fleet constraints, other operational constraints, because once a week we all know is basically like a charter tour operator type schedule. So it's quite insignificant. It would be basically catering initially to the point-to-point market with very little feed for those who have a lot of flexibility in their schedule to be able to transit via Luanda once a week. Logically speaking, it should be minimum 3 times a week to any city in China, which they want to launch to. So until that route becomes 3 times a week, it basically would have no real chance of succeeding. But I found it, to be frank, very surprising that they chose Guangzhou as their Chinese route, because Guangzhou to Luanda had only 18,000 passengers point to point last year, whereas Shanghai to Luanda had 34,000 passengers point to point last year, and Beijing had 21,000 passengers point to point last year. So, considering that it's a ultra long haul route and that your point to point market would form the core base load, I would have expected Shanghai to have been chosen instead of Guangzhou. And plus, the Shanghai yields are higher than Guangzhou as well. But naturally, TAAG is now changing to a hub and spoke model. The feeder traffic from the regional network, once that is fully developed, is much higher for Guangzhou from a volume point of view. But as we all know, at the end of the day, it's your point-to-point market that forms the baseload of an ultra long-haul operation. And also for Shanghai, if they did fly to Shanghai instead of Guangzhou, there's much less competition to Shanghai from sub-Saharan Africa, because there's literally no one else except Ethiopian flying to Shanghai. Whereas for Guangzhou, you have Kenya Airways, you have Air Tanzania, you have Ethiopian Airlines. Ethiopian actually is 10 times, 11 times, 12 times a week. So you have that extra layer of competition to deal with, whereas for Shanghai you don't. So, but at the end of the day, as long as it's once a week, it does not have a real chance of succeeding. It has to increase the frequencies to make it competitive, as well as to gain some travel agent interest. So that's my short take on the matter. But it seems to be largely government driven for this flight to operate. Now, regarding to the 787-10, it could fly it from Luanda to Guangzhou without any payload issues, but it would be interesting to see Guangzhou to Luanda on a 787-10, because it's about just over 14 hours, if I'm not mistaken, and that is the borderline cutoff of the 787-10, provided TAAG has the IGW version, because these -10s are ex-Vietnam Airlines planes, 24J 343Y. So I don't know if the 77-10, the ones that TAAG have, can actually fly that route non-stop with a full payload of baggage and cargo, because majority of the passengers flying from Guangzhou to Luanda would have 3 suitcases minimum. And I say minimum 3 suitcases. So let's see how it goes.
All right. Sean?
My comment is we are wasting our time trying to give commercial justification to a route that we opened by saying is not driven by commercial reasoning. The only reason why I can probably think why Guangzhou is chosen other than the others is, number one, slots are easier in Guangzhou than in Shanghai. And number two, Lagos to Guangzhou is growing incredibly fast. And obviously, TAAG is doubling down in the Lagos market and trying to create connectivity from Lagos to Luanda and onward to the world. So that's the only potential reason where I could say why Guangzhou was chosen instead of Shanghai. But is this a smart idea? No, it's not. But, pressures are in a government airline. And, I will say this about TAAG's new management. I'm not a fan of the new CEO personally, but professionally, he's as competent as pretty much any other airline CEO in Africa can be. So he's not going to make stupid decisions. I think we will hopefully see a more data-driven decision approach in the Miguel era there. And, good for him if he does. I wish TAAG nothing but the best, because Angola is a country which deserves a lot better air service than it currently has domestically, and as a hub, its location is ideal to provide that link to between West, Southern, and Central Africa. There's so much it can do, but hasn't been able to do for a variety of historical reasons. Maybe this is the regime that can change it, but the problems there run very deep, and it's not a miracle, but it's going to take a lot of hard work to rehabilitate the image as well as the mindset within the organization.
Yeah, the big thing that I'd like to mention. Go on. Yeah. I was going to come to that. I know what you're going to say.
Okay, go on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll come to it. So, no, the first thing to say is that the one bit of stability, because I know him personally, is the Minister of Transport. He's been there for a long time, and he's been the consistent person there guiding this airline, and he's very vocal, and he understands and talks about the airline being an economic enabler, not just a standalone thing. So he's aware of that, and he understands it's going to take a lot of investment. So I just think that point's important. And obviously, as you say, Miguel has come from Embry-Riddle, educated. He's got experience. He knows the industry. So I think I'm quite excited about it. But obviously, it depends on what the mandate of the airline is. So what we were going to talk about, of course, is they've got EASA approval on the Dreamliner for Europe. That's what you're going to talk about. So if that's the case, they obviously are going to go to Lisbon. They go to Lisbon, so they're going to put it there. But would they, would Gatwick be on the agenda here, Sean?
Look, TAAG to Gatwick has been on again, off again since, I think the first time they applied for slots was 2004. So, this is literally one of them. If not every season, every other year, it comes up. TAAG to Gatwick will come. No, it's coming. No, it's not. Oh, it's launching. No, it's not launching. So, yeah, let's wait and see. I think one thing we can be assured of is that they're not going back to Madrid. I think that's that phase has passed with the departure of Eduardo. Yes, so there will be other routes, but Madrid will not be one of them. London may be one of them. I think Lisbon and Porto obviously are the bread and butter. But yeah, I think the routes from Angola are east-west right now, and we're seeing an increase in their popularity to South America, especially from Southern Africa and whatever as they go. I know Nairobi to Sao Paulo is a route that I know a couple of people who went to the IATA AGM using TAAG and came back from that route. So, it's there. I think the east-west is where TAAG's real potential is going to lie rather than the north-south. I think the north-south, they still have an image issue where they're going to need to rehabilitate themselves a bit more before they can really capture markets other than Portugal, where obviously the O&D demand is high.
Yeah, which is possible with the new aircraft, new branding, new kind of positioning, new management, etc.
It just takes time.
Yeah, and I was part of that.
The new aircraft are a bit of a dog's breakfast because they're three different configurations across 4 different airframes.
Yeah. But then we've talked around why that's the case.
Yeah, we know why, but it's not like your image is getting much of a rehabilitation when today you have premium economy, tomorrow you're all economy, next day you have first class.
Yeah. No, it is. Also, no, I was just going to say, Behramjee, I did my bit for London because I ran London Marathon and TAAG were my big sponsor. So I had TAAG across the front here, but I really wanted to put coming soon to London, but they wouldn't let me do that. So, but hopefully that could happen one day soon.
You know what? Maybe they could do a tag to their Lisbon flight.
Oh, very nice. Well, I've got a drum roll here somewhere.
One thing I would just like to say for Guangzhou, for them to at least increase the load factor on Guangzhou, they need to expand their regional network to include Lubumbashi, Harare, Lusaka, and Entebbe in particular. Lubumbashi to Guangzhou last year was about 64,000 passengers, with vast majority flew on Ethiopian Airlines. And Entebbe to Guangzhou also increased last year to 41,000. I believe they're looking seriously into adding Accra into their route network. So all these little nitty-gritty stations, the more stations they add regionally, that will help the increase the load factor.
Yeah.
But again,
Did we cover that they've announced Lusaka? Because I saw TAAG has announced Lusaka to be
why did not?
starting second half of the year. So
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Lusaka
so.
is a market they are going back into. But look, Behramjee, it all makes great sense. But a once a week flight to Guangzhou
Yes, of course.
is not a commercially viable flight. So you can talk about what network and
They have
what
to
feed you
increase
want.
that.
The reality is, whatever you do, it's never going to be commercially competitive with ET's
That we know.
12, 777, 300s.
That we know. It has to be 3 times a week minimum to be even spark the interest of a travel agent to sell them properly. So they'll eventually get there, but they just need to sort out their internal operations to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely right. Let's move on because we've still got three or 4 to go.
but there's one thing good that they've done is that they've put the 787-9 on Guangzhou instead of a 777, because at least they're saving on their operational costs.
Okay. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Right. Let's go to Nigeria. Let's go to Air Peace. Let's talk about that. So they are looking at doing Lagos, Sao Paulo, new services to Libreville, Conakry, Bamako, Douala from 1st of August, Lagos, Manchester. They're also looking at Toronto, New York, Guangzhou. Is there anywhere they're not looking at? So, they're trying to do something really that no Nigerian carrier's done for a long time, especially not a
since Arik, since Behramjee did it at Arik,
since Behramjee and Gad were there, So talk us through what they're doing and why they're doing it, Behramjee, because you're kind of the expert on this market.
Sure.
Being based over there.
So just like I said about Uganda Airlines fleet strategy, Air Peace also has some pros and cons over here with the recent announcement. Air Peace announced officially that they're going to expand their African network by introducing, or should I say reintroducing, 4 weekly flights from Lagos to Douala and Libreville. So it'll be Lagos, Douala, Libreville with Fifth Freedom traffic on the Douala Libreville sector 4 times a week, early morning departure from Lagos, and then also 3 times a week Lagos, Bamako, Conakry. Currently, Lagos to Douala is about 20,000 passengers point to point, and nobody flies it nonstop. It's actually one of the highest yielding markets in intra-Africa with no direct service. If you want to buy a ticket on ASKY, for example, to fly between the 2 cities via Lomé, your minimum fare is about 800 euros. So just for a 1.5 hour flight, all taxes inclusive round trip. So the yield is there, definitely. Lagos to Libreville, though, it's a one-stop product on Air Peace. And they'll be competing against Air Cote d'Ivoire, who operate this flight non-stop. Twice a week they've reduced, as well as AfriJet, which is now known as Fly Gabon. But Fly Gabon uses a CRJ. So when the CRJ is about nearly 80-90% full, they would have a payload restriction with baggage left behind. So I don't see it being a problem for passengers flying Lagos, Douala, Libreville, from Lagos to Libreville, sitting in the plane in Douala for 45 minutes. That's not a big problem. I forecast the Lagos, Douala, Libreville flight to do reasonably well because of the current monopoly on the Lagos, Douala sector in particular and the high yields. However, Lagos, Bamako, Conakry, I feel will be a big failure because there is hardly any demand from Lagos to Bamako and Conakry, and Abuja does not connect with that flight because, again, it's an early morning departure from Lagos. Yes, there is a lot of demand from Bamako to Conakry, Fifth Freedom, but the longest sector is Lagos to Bamako. So I do not see that route doing well. And if they want to increase the load factor on that Bamako-Conakry sector, they should look at doing Lagos, Cotonou, Bamako, Conakry, because that would help increase the load factor for sure. And Lagos, Cotonou is only a half-an-hour flight. Something to consider. I know it would then end up being a 2-stop product, but they currently fly Lagos, Abidjan, Dakar, Banjul, Lagos, Abidjan, Dakar, somewhere else also. So to conclude, Lagos, Douala, Libreville should be fine, but Lagos, Bamako, Conakry as is will not perform well. It has to be via Conakry to at least generate some incremental load and revenue.
Okay, cool. Sean,
And with
your
regard, one
thoughts
second.
on this?
With regards to Manchester, New York, Toronto, that is just they've been given the rights as yet. It's not confirmed. There is some backdoor planning going on, but I think right now still in the speculation phase. Sean and I are both very big advocates that Manchester Lagos deserves a direct link. It had about 94,000 passengers flying point to point last year, with about 52% of those passengers flying two stops: Manchester, Geneva, Addis Ababa, Lagos. So, because Ethiopian had some very good fares and the two free piece baggage allowance. So, does Lagos to Manchester deserve a non-stop flight? Definitely. It has the market. Airpeace can definitely stimulate it. So let's see how that goes. That should be a priority, and not flying to New York or Toronto, because at least the flight to Manchester is half the flying distance, more or less. And the yields are also a bit better and much more lower risk. So I would say,
Their CEO is not wanted in the UK while he is in the United States. So that obviously is a big reason why Manchester would be an easier destination for them than
plus
New
their
York
brand
would,
is
given
the brand
the
is now,
ownership structure.
and the brand is known now in the UK, in London market at least, and also for
For better or
people
for
in
worse.
and also in John's for people in John's neighborhood. Those who live in Birmingham can also take the train to Manchester or drive to Manchester or take a bus and fly direct to Lagos.
Yeah, all those people in Manchester can get a bus to Birmingham,
Manchester
and
and even
Birmingham can get the
Leeds,
flight.
Bradford, that area as well can just hop down to Manchester and fly directly into Lagos instead.
Because Leeds, Bradford to Lagos, I mean, every time I go to Leeds, I
That
just
would
see the
be
Nigerians everywhere, and I'm like, damn, this is like mini Lagos. But anyway, yes, enough Leeds jokes. Look, I'll keep it brief. I agree with their intra-African expansions. I think those are the smart thing to do in their current market situation, especially if these are going to be driven by Embraers, which they have, and as they're bringing in 737s to displace the Embraers on the domestic, the Embraers are ideal to open up these regional routes at low risk. I agree with you that Lagos Bamako has historically not done well. I don't expect it to do well. I think it's worth the risk. So I'm going to back Noel on this one. You know, there's reasons why he's doing it, and I wish them success on that. Brazil, iffy at best. I think the numbers were barely 20,000 a year between Nigeria and Brazil last year. It's not a large market. West Africa to South America is a dangerous market in terms of what is being moved on that market, both in terms of cargo and passengers. And, you know, Airpeace already is having challenges with their Caribbean flights that we won't rehash for the N+1th time. I'd be very cautious about opening a Brazil route, but once again, keep in mind Brazil has been the only country that has welcomed Alan Onyema with his diplomatic trip with the state visit last year, and you know he was embraced by Lula and promised flights. So there is, you know, I'll say this for Alan: when he promises something like "I will launch Lagos to Antigua," he bloody well launched it. So he said he's going to launch Lagos to Sao Paulo. I would not be surprised to see it launch. I would be very surprised to see it succeed, unfortunately, given the current market size. But hey, we shall see. Finally, Lagos Manchester. I'm a bit confused at this point right now because I've been on calls with David Kendrick of the UKC. I knew we'd have multiple Kendrick mentions here, but where I was made aware that the Nigerian bilateral with the UK did not support Manchester as a point of call. However, I have recently been made aware of a MOU which does indeed allow 7 weekly services by Nigerian carriers into Manchester. So I'm not sure at what point that has changed in the last 3 years or so since I was aware of it. But I do understand from the regulatory standpoint now that most of the hurdles for Airpeace being able to launch that route are significantly reduced. And given that they have reduced their Abuja to London services to 3 weekly now, I think, and I would be an early runner for route of the year 2026, if they should announce it for this Christmas season, would be Lagos to Manchester if they do it. And I do expect to see that launch before the end of this year, or at least be announced before the end of this year. It is a market that continues to grow and is ripe for the taking. It's a Harare, London kind of market that is just act. Don't think anymore. Act. The thought, the analysis, everything has been done for you. Pull the trigger and make it happen. They're pulling triggers on a lot of other things. This is where the trigger. Point the gun, pull the trigger. Noel, Alan, Toyin, everybody over there, make it happen. You'll get my nomination for long haul route of the year if you do that.
Right.
Yes, even I would agree. Manchester is very close to my heart because I follow Lancashire county cricket very well. So in the 1980s. Oh, okay. So in the 1980s.
My mouse mat.
Yes, so in the 1970s and 80s, Clive Lloyd and Wasim Akram played for Lancashire. And then
Wasim Akram was not playing for Lancashire in the 1970s.
No, I said 70s and 80s. So I said first Clive Lloyd, then Wasim.
Fair.
Then they had
I went to
isn't
school
Clive Lloyd
with.
now chairman?
I don't know.
He might be, but I went to school with Clive Lloyd's son, Jason. He was at school. He used to bowl at me in the nets and take my head off.
Then they had an epic failure with the Ganguly experiment, where then they recovered that with Murali Dharan.
Anyway, we're getting off track. But yes, I'm glad that we brought it to cricket. That's good, and I'm glad that I've got my prop with me. That's actually Nick Ashton. And if you know Nick Ashton,
this is actually one of my bucket.
This
is actually one of my. Nick. It's actually one of my bucket list items. I've not visited Old Trafford Cricket Ground, and I really wanted to do that in 2016 when I was.
You can do it 2-for-1, cricket and football. They're like 800 meters apart.
One more. Yeah. One more anecdote. I actually played on Old Trafford Cricket Ground during an Ashes Test series in the 90s when I was a school kid. Our school played quick cricket in the outfield at lunchtime, and I hit a 6 into the crowd, and it was one of the highlights of my.
So that would be 1993 or 1997?
No, early 93. Yeah,
93.
It wouldn't have been 97.
Oh, that was born.
We went through this before, John. I remember we went through this on a podcast where we looked at the actual scoreboard and when lunch was. We did this before.
It was great. So anyway, enough cricket anecdotes. Right, we're going to smash through these last few, but as best we can. So the first one's ASKY, and all of the adjustments intra-African. There's quite a bit though, isn't there, Behramjee? So
yes.
Look, you've got to go through it as much as you can, but it's all sort of tweaks and changes, right? So you've been across it. Talk us through what they're doing.
So ASKY is basically pivoting their intra-Africa route network and focusing on opportunities which are currently very profitable for them, as well as looking at certain new niche routes where they feel being a second carrier would bring in some benefits. Now, due to the issues in Johannesburg, they've seen a drop in their passenger load factor into Johannesburg, as well as Fly Gabon starting Libreville to Joburg, which has not made that Fifth Freedom sector viable. So they've reduced Johannesburg from a daily product to 4 times a week. They've cancelled the Libreville, Johannesburg Fifth Freedom sector, and they've consolidated it to be via Kinshasa. So Joburg, Kinshasa, Lome increases from 3 to 4 times a week. That's one thing. They've introduced a new Fifth Freedom route within Africa, basically Lome, Libreville to Brazzaville, which is a high volume, high yielding route, 1.5 hours flying time. Only AfriJet flies that. So that's another good opportunity for them because they'll be able to carry all the baggage, which AfriJet cannot on their ATRs. Currently, as far as I know, Dakar and Lagos are their most profitable routes, followed by the Douala and N'Djamena flight. Dakar, they've increased from 9 times a week to double daily operation. It doesn't mean that they've introduced a new hub wave bank. They're basically flying 2 flights within few minutes of each other back and forth because Dakar provides a lot of network feed for their intra-Africa flights within West Africa and the CMARC region. So that's there. That should do fine. Also, Air Senegal has cut back on a bit of intra-Africa flying, so that should also help them. Abidjan is increased from 9 to 10 flights a week. Again, a big route for them, but not only for point to point, but also sixth freedom via Lomé to the network. And this has also been permitted because they're going to increase their overall fleet strength. It'll be increased from 14 to 16 units from middle of July with the 737 MAX 8s. So, and eventually during the later part of the year, they'll get one more unit. So as usual, ASKY, a very disciplined, focused approach. No fooling around here and there. They know their market very well. They know that the high yield passenger within the CMARC and the ECOWAS region prefer flying them due to their reliability and punctuality. So, and they had no problems and no shame in cutting back Johannesburg because of what has been happening there politically and affecting their passenger load. So yeah, they know what they're doing and they do it well. You can't, as long as they don't give in to the temptation of getting wide bodies too soon to fly to Paris and other places. It's all good.
Yeah. Anything to add on this one, Sean? Or are you happy with this? I think you covered.
No, I think I agree with Behramjee's analysis on that. I think the question of Paris, again, to plug my panel at AviaDev, where we had Marshall from the head of commercial at ASKY was on the panel. I asked him directly what are the plans. His basic comment is Paris would probably, in all likelihood, be their first long-haul route, but there's no specific plan to launch Paris in the immediate environment. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Esaias, the CEO of ASKY, who really old friend of mine, caught up with him after years in Lomé this week. So I know he's a regular podcast listener. Hi, Esaias. Here's a quick shout out to you. But yeah, other than that, I think the one thing which we have seen, and Behramjee alluded a bit to it, is I think the Lomé hub has now reached its capacity. And I think where we are going to see incremental growth from ASKY now is in strategic tags. And I expect that we will see a little bit more of the changes in which tags are there and a bit more of the focus in second-daily frequencies to some of these destinations where the focus is going to be more in terms of the Fifth Freedom tag market rather than the O&D markets, which will then be served by the direct flight. So you'll see a densification of certain routes rather than expansion of new routes because quite simply, with the exceptions of maybe a Kumasi, a Kano, and a Nouadhibou, they're serving pretty much every airport in Western Central Africa, which can take a 737 viably. And I do not expect to see Kumasi or Nouadhibou anytime soon, although Kano, by their own admission, is going to be announced probably within the next month or two.
Port Harcourt.
Okay, Harcourt is on the list, but bilaterally it is constrained at this point of time. And, Bobo Dioulasso could also be on their list. I mean, certainly there are more which could do it, but in practical terms, it is a very small and shrinking list of viable destinations for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Last two. Sean's pet and hobby is next, which is Air Tanzania. So what's happening? They are going to start service to Muscat from next month, apparently, in Oman. And they're also putting their 787 into Cape Town. I'm not quite sure. They're talking about this Moscow service. There's a lot going on. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to speak to them because unfortunately they didn't show up at AviaDev, which was a bit disappointing, but maybe not that surprising. So yeah, sure.
To be fair, that is exactly how their commercial department runs. They announce a route, they announce a destination, and then they just don't show. He's probably going to show up 2 weeks late, which tends to be how they launch their routes. They announce the start date, and they actually launch it 2 weks afterwards. So if you check with the hotel...
You think there's an Air Tanzania commercial team wandering the streets of Gaborone?
You never know. Is there a guy named Patrick who showed up? We don't know which Patrick because their succession of commercial directors seem to be named Patrick, but hey, that's it for that. But yeah, Muscat to Tanzania, due to a number of reasons. I mean, is a strong market. They can't go wrong. I believe it's due to start with an A220, so that's look, it's as low risk as you can get. Good move for a change. They'll find a way to screw it up in practice. They'll probably run it like one way, not via Zanzibar, but via Pemba Island, and with a Dash 8 connection. They'll find something to screw it up because they're at Tanzania, and that's what they do. 787 to Cape Town, I think is just it was just a last minute swap. It got the Cape Town spotters very excited. There's all sort of videos of it and getting a water cannon salute and things as such. And big deal. I mean, that's a twice weekly service via Victoria Falls in a triangle. That is the dumbest schedule you could put in to a market that has so much potential, but it's Air Tanzania, so at least they're not running it one way via Zanzibar.
Yes, very true. Anything to add, Behramjee, or can we move on from Air Tanzania? I think we've said a lot about them over
to
months.
say Muscat to Zanzibar, Muscat to Dar es Salaam was 44,000 passengers last year, whereas Muscat to Zanzibar was 38,000. So total market size of 82,000 passengers. Historically, Oman and Tanzania share a lot of links for the last 200 years. A mixture of
Zanzibar
labor.
was the capital, right? Zanzibar was the capital of Oman. Yeah.
So the volume is there. They will take away a lot of traffic from Ethiopian Airlines for sure. Oman Air currently flies the route. So let's see. As Sean said, they've done the right move.
Oman Air used to fly double daily. They used to fly double daily. So
that's because they wanted feed from their network also. Hence, but like Sean said, it's a low risk move with the 220. But knowing their commercial acumen, they'll find some way to mess it up. Unfortunately, let's see.
Right. Yeah, let's see. Right. Okay. Last one, which is all about the German link and the European link to Namibia. So we just had announced that Discover are going to increase services to Windhoek from Munich by an extra 2 flights a week. So that will be 12 frequencies a week from Germany, from Frankfurt and Munich together. And then there is also Edelweiss that have just launched as well earlier this month, 2 or 3 times a week. I think it's ramping up to in July. So much capacity, 15 flights. And then there's Condor as well that is talking about adding in more capacity.
Condor announced.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted, because he was on your, with you, Sean, obviously, Marco, the CCO, talking about this. And they've said, we've worked with Discover since they launched in 2021. It's been an anchor destination for them. It's been a real good performer. And obviously they're growing this massively. And maybe it shows that, is there a case for a national airline in Namibia? Do you need it when you've got this kind of feed? Maybe that's not the question today. That will be a great debating point, but so much capacity going in there that's going to support this incredible, destination. If you've got this many wide-body aircraft coming in and out of the country.
I want to say something that I've mentioned in previous podcasts, and it's just a numbers analysis here. Namibia is unique among African markets in that virtually 90% of the traffic is north-south traffic rather than east-west. That means the Namibian market is less vulnerable to being taken over by the Middle Eastern carriers who specialize in east-west traffic. So the Middle Eastern carriers who tried to go in there like Qatar have essentially left the market, because when so much of your demand is concentrated in Germany in particular, and there's very little demand to say the Chinas and the Indias, especially compared to other African markets, you cannot compete by getting people to do a 6-hour detour via the Middle East when the Germans can just come in with non-stop flights at a fraction of the cost and provide German service. So the Namibian market is very unique in that respect. Cannot see, as long as Discover is going to be in its current role, which is the leisure arm, the German leisure arm of the Lufthansa group, Namibia is the bread and butter market for it. Where do Germans go when they want to go south, well, they go to Namibia, and Discover is the way to fly it. So it makes sense that they're doubling down, and it makes sense that they're not that vulnerable to, other than obviously competition from Condor and other European potential operators doing it. There's not much vulnerability in that market. They can really defend their position against any newcomers who pop in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Behramjee?
I tend to disagree with this capacity expansion because, ironically, Condor announced a window just yesterday from June 2027, and then just today, Discover announced adding 2 more flights a week. I think it's too much capacity added into the market, and it's obviously the Discover edition was basically a retaliatory move against Condor, no doubt about that, because it happened within 24 hours, more or less. And I feel now someone will blink, unfortunately, because there's just too much capacity. You can't justify 15 weekly non-stop flights from Namibia, from Windhoek to Germany. Plus, you have the Edelweiss 2 weekly flights to Zurich. And also, we might get one more European carrier coming there soon. So I just feel that there's a bit too much capacity being dumped into that market right now. And who will suffer from a market share point of view would be probably Ethiopian, because they carried last year a lot of traffic to Germany, though they'll have to find some other markets to fill up that gap, because with Condor flying non-stop, that will take away a lot of the one-stop market via Addis Ababa. But just to let you know, Ethiopian's top 10 markets out of Windhoek in the last year were: number 1 was Frankfurt, number 2 Paris, then Milan, Brussels, Vienna, Rome, Moscow, London, Geneva, and Beijing, in that ranking order.
Very European then.
Yes. Like
as I said, this is a north-south. It is a north-south market rather than an east-west market. And if you look at all the other capitals in the region in Southern Africa, there is no other one. I mean, forget other capitals. Look at all the destinations. Maybe Maun, maybe in that list as well for a north-south route. But in terms of what is being deployed into there, and being a capital and being just as an entire country, it is virtually 100% north-south traffic. Even Beijing, if you look at the numbers, Beijing versus Frankfurt, I mean, we're not even a tenth of that number in terms of what the numbers are for Beijing and number 10. So it is a very, very unique market in that respect, and that is what is driving that. And I don't disagree with Behramjee. There's a lot of capacity in there, and I think what we will be seeing in all likelihood, especially with Condor, because I don't think Discover is, well, maybe Discover as well. We'll see how that goes. But Condor is not going to be just pushing this as O&D from Germany. Condor's obviously got a larger North American network and stuff. And I think that they're going to try and probably push Namibia from the North American end as a potential, seasonal destination, given that we've seen increased interest in Southern Africa from North America as a tourism market. So I think that may be what's driving Condor's decisions to increase capacity, but we shall see. It's an interesting battleground to look at, and it's an interesting battleground where the Middle Eastern carriers are not even substitutes on the bench. They're just spectators for all practical purposes.
Exactly. That's my feeling on this, is that yes, it's a lot of capacity, but they're owning that market, so they can do it. And I think, based on my conversations with the guys at Discover, every time they add more capacity, they're pleasantly surprised with the reaction. So they're like, well, let's see how far we can push this. And obviously a second point of departure being Munich rather than just Frankfurt now, you're getting a different part of the German market, and then they're obviously very close with all of the tour operators. There's cultural links, all the other things. So I'm they're not going to make bad decisions, and they've shown that the only route that they've started in Africa and pulled out of was Kruger, right? They were going to Kruger.
But the thing is, Germany to Namibia last year was just over 100,000 passengers point to point. It's not a market that needs so much extra capacity.
But it's I bet the growth year on year, because the capacity, they'll now be able to sell that. The concern is, can Namibia cope with this number of tourists? Where is everybody going to go?
I saw on LinkedIn yesterday, the Namibia minister, they revoked visa on arrival for any country that does not allow.
They did this 2 years ago.
They did this when we were there.
2 years ago, Behramjee.
So then
this is nothing new. This is just some social media forward that is just resurfaced 2 years later. They do this all the time. Now, I promise you, next week you're going to see the social media thing saying how the president has kicked all Americans out of the country and nationalized the mining industry. Because that also, literally, these happen every 3 months. You see, Namibia has done this. How wonderful.
And a new national carrier.
But how easy is it for Germans?
I'll leave that part out of it.
But how easy is it for Germans to get visas to Namibia? Like 3 days?
Yeah, it's easy.
You land at the airport, you pay your money, and you walk through. It takes you 35 seconds.
Oh, so then it is visa on arrival.
Yeah, but you have to pay, whereas you didn't have to pay. It was free back 3 years ago. They put in a cost, there's a cost, but it's easy.
Has quietly expanded their visa on arrival program to more destinations than when they had prior to when they had visa free for Europeans and Americans. So, India, for example, now gets visa on arrival in Namibia. They've expanded it to a number of new points where previously you had to go to an embassy or do an e-visa or whatever else. So Namibia is opening up rather than closing up.
Yes, so then
it's not a cheap destination.
Because, credit to them, because this was something that was highlighted to them at AviaDev in Namibia 2 years ago, and they said, you know what, we will lobby for this to happening, and they are making it happen. And I think that the increase in the interest to that is a reflection of this. That's fine. Charge reciprocal fees, but make it easy, and they facilitated it, even if they want to make a bit of money on the side in reciprocity. And it's not going to affect you when you're spending thousands of dollars on a Namibian holiday.
A few
50
dollars
euros on your visa is a rounding error.
So I was confused because that post on LinkedIn hinted as though you are not going to get visa on arrival. That's
you are an educated man. Stop following WhatsApp University, please.
And absolutely, just to echo Sean's point before we close, Namibia have walked the walk. We hosted AviaDev there 2024 this year in Botswana. Obviously, it's a neighboring country. They had a Namib Sky Lounge, and we had the CEO Sebulon, we had the CMO Charmaine with us as well, and they were taking part actively, speaking to the airlines. And they're we've been trying for years to get more of these destination management organizations and tourist boards to come to AviaDev. Many seem to think it's still the job of the airport to have these conversations when it's their job, right?
And also, it's
everybody's job. It is everybody's job. It is a team effort. And I think the ones who have been successful are the ones who have actually put together conglomerates, joint bids,
correct.
Some sort of working group between the airport and the tourism organization to put together the whole thing. Zanzibar did that. Botswana Air Access, Zambia Airlift, or whatever it's called.
It's called Air Access Zambia. No, I can't remember.
Airlift Zambia. It's Airlift. Because everyone was looking at it like, is this an airline? Is this a cargo airline? And they're like, no, it's actually it's actually where you find Tim Harris.
And that's where we'll be going 9th to 11th of June 2027. That's where AviaDev is, hosted in beautiful Lusaka. Behramjee, final word to you. What do you got to say?
If Condor has some problems filling up the Windhoek flight, I think they should look into a tag to Gaborone for some high-yield safari tourism. They could tap into that. And you both of you forgot to mention the most important new development in Namibia, which is it has the first beach-loving resident lion pride in Africa, as you all must have seen on CNN a couple of months ago, where they documented lions finally living on the beach and hunting seals.
Amazing. Yeah, I've been to the seal colonies there, and it is the most amazing country. I loved my time in Namibia. So I would recommend everybody goes, however you can get there. And obviously, these new routes are very much for the European market, but we've seen growth as well. Through Airlink and Safair, etc. There is that market
too. If you do a tag to Gaborone, they have some potential because it's
that's very kind of wrong, right? You'd want to do a tag to Maun because there's no safari really in Gaborone. You want to go to the north, right? Which is what
we went to Mokolodi. It wasn't too bad.
We
saw a giraffe.
It's not Okavango though.
Yeah, but that airport cannot handle a wide body, right?
I don't believe so, but I'm prepared to be correct.
I think ET has put a 7-8 in there in the past, but it's usually a max.
They fly the 737 max. Yeah. I've done it. I've been on that flight. Yeah, it was very good, and it stops in Ndola on the way back to Addis. That's what they do. So
well, Ndola, Bulawayo, it depends on the day of the week.
Oh, right. Well, it was Ndola when I went, which is a lovely new airport up in the north there in
Simon Wansa Kapwepe International Airport in Ndola.
Excellent. Right. Thank you so much. We've been done nearly 2 hours. So that is us for June. Can you believe? I think that's our first one, and we didn't talk about Ethiopian Airlines. How about that? It wasn't one of our topics. That's the first time,
you know what?
Surely.
Ethiopian has not done anything new this month. We managed to capture the Mauritius last month. And
when are we going to know about what's happening with the leadership? When are we going to know?
So the successor will be anointed at the next board meeting, and the board meeting, is anytime. I mean, I don't know their schedule on this, but we shall see. I think the decision is pretty much made by all practical accounts. We've seen who was in their delegation to IATA, and everything is being put in place for a smooth handover. So I wish the best to Ato Lema and to Ato Mesfin in his long overdue retirement. I mean, how Mesfin just keeps going like the Energizer Bunny, I do not know, but
no, me neither.
It would be he needs to take a rest and not go off and take on like 10 other new challenges.
Yeah, we will see. So between now and us meeting to do this next month in July, I would like our audience out there, go and check out the AviaDev YouTube channel. We worked really hard. We spent loads of money to professionally record these sessions. It's a personal thing from me, but I get asked by so many people, can I come to the event? And obviously we can't fly people to the event, etc., but we can bring the event to you post event, and it's completely free. It's nice to consume. Go and prove that you really are interested by going to have a look at it. So that's the end of that little rant.
And if I can
from me.
plug one thing, if I can plug one video you're going to watch and you will really enjoy this, even if you're not an aviation fan, watch the debate, the big debate between Edmund and Namshla, moderated by Gilbert Kibe. It is worth watching and saving to your playlist. And anytime you want to have a laugh, or anytime you ever call anyone uncle, it is worth. Believe me, you will not regret it. I've watched it 3 times already, and I'll probably watch it a 4th time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And also, of course, Aaron's Lifetime Achievement Award, which was good fun as well. We had a few surprises in there, along with Atom Esfin actually getting involved in that. So yeah, go and check those out. Obviously, get on the website, get yourself signed up on the mailing list if you haven't already. Connect with us on LinkedIn if you haven't. That's where you'll find all the stuff that we're doing. I've got a few podcasts coming up over the coming weeks, but we will be back towards the end of July probably for the next one. So yeah, we'll do it all again.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. So we'll play you out with the sting, and we'll see you all very soon after the 2 hour marathon. All right. Cheers, guys. See you soon.
Bye-bye.